Protests continue to sweep across major U.S. cities following the Trump administration's decision to deploy 4,000 National Guards and 700 U.S. Marines in support of immigration enforcement officials. While Los Angeles remains the epicenter, demonstrations have also been reported from Seattle to New York City. More protests are expected on Thursday. Meanwhile, a federal judge is set to hear California's request to limit the military's role in immigration operations. We're now joined by Peter Feaver, professor at Duke University, to talk more about this. Professor Peter, thank you very much for joining us. Let me begin by asking you, how is the use of the U.S. National Guard, the Marines, the military against protesters going to go down in American history and also impact America's image as a democracy?
Well, there is ample precedent for using the military in domestic scenarios like this. From the very beginning days of the Republic for the last 250 years, there have been from time to time circumstances where the leaders, federal authorities, decided that they needed more muscle than the local police could provide, and so they called upon regular Army units or the National Guard. So it's not unprecedented. However, it's not a mission that the U.S. military likes to do. It's not what they train for. They're not optimized for it. And in most of those historical cases, it's gone sideways in some respect, and the military's come out of it saying, well, we don't want to have to do that again if we can avoid it. And so I think the military is approaching this mission with great concern and genuine worry that it could go sideways.
Right. Could you also give us a sense of who these protesters are who have come out to protest against Donald Trump's immigration policies and also raids carried out in Los Angeles and other locations?
Well, it's a complex situation, as you can imagine. The proximate cause was the ICE, which is the federal agency responsible for enforcing immigration law, went on a number of aggressive, assertive raids, not just stopping people at the borders, but going to places, in this case, inside Los Angeles, where it was known that there would be large concentrations of people here without documentation. So here in the United States, illegally, and ICE went to arrest them, detain them, and then with a plan to shipping them back. That was a provocative gesture that the administration had not done up until now, or not done at this scale up until now. And as it happened, members of the community, some of them perhaps also here illegally, but many more just members of the community, mobilized to protest it. Then at the same time, other agitators joined what had been a peaceful protest and turned it violent, with a lot of physical violence against cars and buildings. And in response to that, the Trump administration said that the local law enforcement, which were under the direction of the mayor of Los Angeles, who's a Democrat, and then the state authorities under the governor, who's also a Democrat, Trump said, those Democratic political leaders are moving too slowly. I need to take over. And under the U.S. Constitution, he does have that authority. His authority supersedes that of local authorities. But it's relatively rare for the president to act in that way. And the governor and the mayor insisted that it was not needed. But then, of course, in response to that escalation, that brought out even more protesters, at least in the short run. The situation is more calm now, but now the question is, will this spread to many other cities, I should say, around the United States?
You know, what's going to be the political fallout of the action that Donald Trump has taken? Clearly, there has been a crackdown by the U.S. government, by the president, on the protesters in L.A. Now the protests are spreading. What's going to be the political impact on Donald Trump, the Republicans?
Well, I'll answer that question, but I also want to answer the political impact on the military, because in some senses, that's the most fraught. In the short run, this issue works very well for President Trump. It's unified his base. It also knocked off of the headlines his fight with Elon Musk, who had been one of his most powerful backers. And if Musk had continued to oppose President Trump, then a particularly grave political threat. All of that's been knocked off the headlines, and the president's base is rallying support. Likewise, the protesters have used symbols that don't have wide appeal, and so instead, the riots have sort of followed the predictable polarization that the United States has been going through, with Republicans on one side and Democrats on another side. It's not uniformly in favor, not uniformly opposed. As long as the events on the ground do not spiral out of control, and as long as we don't see the U.S. military conducting force against the American protesters, then perhaps the political results will roughly be what I just described. But if it goes sideways, for instance, if we get something like the Kent State shootings that happened about 50, 60 years ago during the Vietnam War, then the damage to the military standing with the public could be quite severe.
Right. So there is, of course, the reputation of the U.S. military and, of course, the president at stake. But as you said, the Republicans and Donald Trump stand to gain politically in the near term. That's all we have time for, Peter. Thank you very much for joining us on the LA protests and the impact on America. Tensions in the Middle East